All right, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, or this evening, this afternoon, we are going to discuss one project in particular and kind of walk you through the process. We buy land, basically. I say land, it usually always comes with a house on it. I don't actually know if we've ever bought a piece of land without a house on it. So we got a piece of land or a house that was, this particular project actually has a fun story. I'll make it short. This one, we always put our signs out in the yard, and those signs are gold, I tell you. The neighbors call me on those signs all the time. A neighbor called me up and said, "Hey, Peter, I got this house over on Meadowvale, and I want to sell it." I said, "Cool." He's like, "I'm going to go to other builders, and I'm going to get other bids." I said, "That's fine." I usually get outbid because everybody wants to pay stupid money for stuff, a lot of times because they have a client in mind, and the client will buy it and charge the client more money. When we build them spec, we need to get them at a good price so that we can have the profit, or have a profit, rather than paying retail for the lot and then not having any room to build a good house and hopefully make some money after we pay all the bills that we have to pay at the end. So he called me up, we made him an offer. Another builder actually that I'm friends with in the same neighborhood, she got a hold of the guy and offered him a higher price because she had a client, which is fine, and I knew I would get outbid, which is fine. You can't win them all. And turns out that they, for whatever reason, they didn't work out. They couldn't get together on the price, the terms, I don't know, whatever. Fast forward like a year, and I've been following up with them every now and then. "Hey, how you doing? You still want to sell it? It hasn't sold." "Oh yeah, Peter, we're chilling, whatever, we're working on it." Finally got a call, "Hey, are you still interested in buying the property?" I said, "Of course I am. I thought you sold it to so-and-so." And he said, "No, we didn't end up making a deal." So we came together and I ended up paying less for that house than I offered the last time, which is good because we needed it. The lot needed a lot of work and development, cut a bunch of trees down, grading, etc. So just goes to show you that sometimes if you don't get the deal right away, you get it later. I mean, it was a year and change later I got that deal from that guy. So we bought the property, we knocked the house down. There's a little ranch on it like there always is, nice big corner lot, knocked the house down. Now for this property, we had a cool idea for a house. Actually, a friend of mine sent me a picture, and I'll show you. And here we are. It's Meadowvale. You can see the rendering of the house. And now I'll show you how we got to this kind of final product. All right, so check this out. This is the original inspiration for this house. This photograph is a picture that a friend of mine sent me, and this is chopped up. You can kind of tell it's very janky. There's like, this is like a screenshot that I took, and I went in like Microsoft Paint and I hacked this apart because I don't know how to work Photoshop. And this is what I came up with, and I said this could be a really cool concept because we had a nice flat lot and we needed to do a slab house, and this house looks really cool. So I didn't want it to be so pointy and peaky. I wanted to kind of bring it down. We also have a height restriction in this property. This is part of an overlay it's called the Meadowcliff Riad. And so you're only allowed to build 28 feet tall from the first floor finished elevation, the FFE, whereas everywhere else you're allowed to build 35 feet. So we had to bring it down shorter. So we kind of have to play with the ceiling heights and the overall height of the roofs and everything. So it's a bit of a challenge when you're doing a peaked roof house, but this is what we came up with. So my designer, Christy Spearman, we sat down and we put together a kind of general idea of what we wanted it to look like. So she drew this up and as a concept, and we had multiple versions. This is the first floor. We had multiple versions that we went back and forth on, and you can see because this is inverted from what the actual house is. The garage is on the right and everything's flipped the other way on the left. This is another version that we came up with. We didn't love this one so much because it just doesn't, the proportions were a little wonky and it didn't fit. It has a second staircase to go to like a bonus room over the garage. And then this is another version of the second story, which is not so far off from what we actually built. But this is, again, the first version that had the staircase. So her and I kind of went back and forth on this different designs and stuff. And then we did a 3-car garage version, which ended up not working out. We had a client who wanted to come in and do a 3-car garage, and I decided that it was just too much and it would delay our project too much, and he wanted to change the roof and he wanted to change all this other stuff. So it would have added a lot of time to our build. So we ended up with what you see here in this render. And again, I'll scroll through. You can kind of see this is where the floor plans ended up. These are on the website if you ever want to go peek at theoryhomes.com. We'll put a little link to the website right here. This is where it ended up. So you got a nice 2-car garage over here on the left side on the back of the house. You walk into a mud area and then boom, it's kitchen, living, dining, one huge room. And then that whole back wall is an 18-foot accordion slider door. And above it, it's all 2-story. You can see on the right here, the open below, that's a 2-story ceiling. So this massive space is all wide open. And when you walk through the front door, and I'll go back to the front elevation picture here, all that glass right there sees straight through to the back of the house. We're gonna have this really cool feature. That's a version that we've done multiple times on other houses that we kind of came up with a cool concept on this like privacy kind of screen, but it's an architectural feature. So we'll have that there. Stay tuned to see that. That's gonna be really cool. It's gonna be really expensive, but it's gonna suit the house and fit the price point of the home. So we came up with these renderings. We finally got the final plan set, and these are the renders that our architect rendered up and drew from the final plans. So you can see it's got the kind of vaulted ceilings on all of the bedrooms on the front and back, which are right here in the front. There's 2, and on the back there's 2 on the 2nd story. So I'll pull up the plans and you guys can kind of see what they actually look like. So this is our final plan set. And these are super simple plans. You can see how it's kind of rendered up there on the top. This bottom corner shows you where it fits on the lot in the build site. And I'll show you another plan in relation to that. These are our elevations. And again, this is just dimensioning out all of our existing kind of ideas and putting them in scale so we can understand them. And then you've got all the windows kind of laid out on there as well. And then we've got some electrical plans and other stuff, window schedules, garage doors, and stairs. So this is literally like, this all stemmed from this picture, which I completely hacked apart in Microsoft Paint like an absolute rookie. And this is what I came up with. Or this is what Christy and I came up with on the design, and then before you know it, you have renderings. And it was kind of funny because we had a guy come in who was interested in the house and was asking us for all kinds of changes, and he wanted a flat roof house. And I was like, we already kind of designed this thing for peaked roof because, you know, we need a place to put in, mechanicals and HVAC and all that fun stuff. So we had some renders put together. This is me doing it ghetto style in Microsoft Paint again, just to get a rough idea of what it might look like for myself. And then I had the architect render some stuff up, and this is what we came up with, and I just really didn't like it. I don't know, it looks like a office complex to me. So we killed that idea completely, stuck with our original plan, which is obviously this, and in person it looks even cooler. Here's some shots of what the house looks like right now. We are in the sheetrock phase, and the floors are being installed. We had some delays on the windows, so we're waiting on these stinking windows to come in. The stucco guy's got 3/4 of the house stuccoed, and we have a bunch of windows that are still missing, so it's kind of a pain. But we're moving along. It's kind of fun to know that you can go from literally a picture that a friend sent me in Paint to a real house that's framed up and about halfway through construction, maybe even a little further along. So this stuff is just completely, you know, by inspiration. You know, there's no rhyme or reason why we do the things that we do. We just get inspired by things. And obviously my designer, Christy, she's very creative, and she has a great way with flowing and creating floor plans for houses. So you have to kind of factor all that in. And then I'll show you one other thing here. You have to do a site plan. So this is the site plan, where a site plan is essentially like a survey, taking the existing property and placing the new house on the lot in the build line. So you can see here, if I zoom in, like obviously, let me zoom back out for you guys. This is the whole property. It's a big square almost. It's almost a square, but it is a rectangle. But you can see that it's got a really nice shape to it. And so there's these things called setbacks. And if you look right here, you can see the 10-foot BL. On the front, you see the 35-foot BL. And then over here on the left, the 35-foot BL. And then on the back, it's kind of covered up by a bunch of stuff, but it says 40 feet BL. And what that means is 40 feet from the back is your setback, 10 from the side, 35 from the front, from here to there, and 35 from the side. This is a corner lot, so you end up actually having 2 front yards. So you have kind of 2 front yard setbacks. Otherwise, this one's 10 on the side. This would also be 10 on the side. But because of the corner lot, you have a street here, they make you set the house back the same as this side. So this dotted line that you see right here underneath the hand goes all the way around the box. That is your, what I like to call build line or buildable area. So that square right there is where you're allowed to build house, structure, patio, whatever. Patios and things like that, detached structures are a different conversation and have rules about being built outside of the build line, but the main structure of the house and the garage have to fit in there, and you can see that we maxed it out. So literally every almost inch, I mean, there's like a few feet on the left, a few feet on the right, but front to back, we've got this sucker maxed out to fit inside of this build line. So that build line is the biggest driver or conversation which is going to dictate how much house you can build on that particular piece of property. So I'll show you, this is the original survey from when we bought the property. You can see the little ranch and the carport. The carport right there is actually part of the house. This little ranch was inside of the build line, and obviously it was a much smaller home and easily fit within that build line. And a lot of times on older houses, you'll find these houses are built over the build line. Sometimes you'll even find little bits of them built over the property line. And that's because of disputes, people didn't do surveys. Things were very different 40, 50 years ago because a lot of these houses are from the 1940s and 50s and later. So these things go way back. Obviously, we didn't have any technology back then that allowed us to get this accurate on this kind of stuff. It was all done the old school way. So sometimes you had non-conforming lots, which means that the house was in a position where it didn't conform with today's codes and standards. So you have to kind of go with exceptions to make something work. We've had houses like that before where they just poke a little corner outside of the build line. We have to get a little administrative variance for that, a zoning variance to allow us to build and stick out past the build line just by a couple feet. They'll usually give you 10% as a gimme. Anything over 10% has to go to full board review, and all kinds of people have to weigh in. The neighbors get an opportunity to weigh in. It's a nightmare. So the key is we want to stay inside of that build box because you can go quick. You don't have to go crazy on variances and all this mess because it can take months. So stick inside of the box and you'll be successful. Obviously, you have to work inside of the topo or the topography of the land. So if there's a lot of hills and valleys and things, you kind of got to work inside of that as well. Figure out where you can set the house elevation-wise to get the dirt and the earth to kind of flow into the house so there's no water issues. A lot of different factors that you got to take into account when you're figuring out what kind of home to build on that particular piece of dirt. So guys, you can see this is what I hand to my concrete guys because we're trying to figure out when we're doing the foundations. So these are kind of some of the hand markings we have to figure out to get this sucker exact, because we essentially just go out on a blank piece of dirt and start building up forms, and we have to get them right on the money accurate down to, you know, fractions of an inch so that when we go to build the house, everything fits. This is some plans that I was giving. Somebody actually wanted to rent the property for a movie shoot, and I was showing them the parts of the property they could use. But this is kind of the structural plan that a render or the image that comes from the designer's software when we're designing the house, because I literally give them something like this in 2D dimensionally, and I show them like a render of what I want the elevation to be like, or I can even just draw it. But we had renders obviously at this point, and this is what they come up with. So this is how the actual house is designed from a structural perspective. You can see these are all roof trusses up here, and because of this kind of shape of the house and the asymmetry here on the backside, we had this little jut out right here, which was a little bit of a challenge, but they got it designed out. This center section looks flat, but it does actually have a small slope to it. And then in the back, you can see all these vaulted ceilings. So these trusses are all designed to give you that vaulted ceiling, so there's no cross section here. This is obviously just the back wall, and it's not showing this. They closed that up with stick framing, which is just framing that's put together on site. So This is kind of a cool concept here that we put together. The designers did a good job. This is what a floor truss layout would look like at the second story floor. Because this house is a slab house, you don't have a floor system obviously for the main level because it's all concrete. So what you are looking at here now is the second story floor or the ceiling of the first story. And these are all the trusses. So they're all numbered and tagged, and all these big blue dotted lines here are heavy LVL beams. You'll see that in some of our videos. We'll put a little clip here walking through. You can see the huge beam that goes right across the staircase and that supports this entire floor system. So all of this is designed here in their software that helps them handle the engineering behind floor loads, roof loads, wind loads, rain loads, dead load, live load, people, furniture, flooring, materials, tile, all that different stuff is all factored into the software to make a strong home. So that's the floor system. These are the profiles. You know, you can kind of go through and see that this is a 1 foot 4 inch, so it's a 16-inch truss. And these are open web trusses, so it looks like a roof truss. These are all kind of 2x4s, all built together. So you get in this central square section is a great opportunity to run like HVAC ducts and mechanicals and plumbing through all of these, really. So you can kind of go through and see that there's all these different truss profiles. And when you go back here, each one of these are tagged. So these are, if I zoom in here, for example, these trusses are F202s. And if you go back over here, you see these are F209s. If I go back to this page, all of those are F202s. And these things come all tagged in the field. So it's literally like putting a puzzle together when you get out there, but it's super simple because when they give you these plans or they ship the truss packages to the site, the trusses all come completely ready to go in order of when you will need them to build it in a logical fashion. So it's pretty cool. This is the roof truss plan. It looks very similar to the floor truss plan. So obviously they're all laid out. You've got HVAC platforms, areas where you can do pull down stairs, HVAC platform over here. So you can feed the HVAC into the house from both sides. And again, these are your roof truss profiles where you can see the number, the name, the dimension, the shape. You know, that one right there has a board right there for your HVAC platform, and you can stand up right here in the attic to service and install your HVAC. So all this stuff is factored in way ahead of time, right on the design, so that you can understand where everything needs to go. Think about placements, think about HVAC, think about elevations. You know, this is a beam profile package that gives you some of the beams. It gives you some of the ceiling heights that you have to frame up to meet these vaulted ceilings and these different gable heights and everything. So everything's pretty detailed for us. And it literally, I just go out to the site, I pour a slab, I have a bunch of framing delivered, they deliver these packages, I hand these plans to my framer and I say, here you go. And these framers know how to do this stuff. They know how to read these plans, they take them and they build it. They have some questions and we have to figure it out on the site. You know, that's when these renders really come in handy because it helps you kind of wrap your brain around how the pieces come together. If you have beams that are overlapping each other, understanding those elevations, your designers can give you these renders so you can use those as visuals because it really helps out. We have another house that we had multiple beams landing on top of each other, and when you're looking at it in 2D, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So when you 3D it out, you can really get an understanding on how to lay them up. This is the Google Street View from 2018. This is showing you the lot and the house that used to be there. So you can see we've got this little tiny guy right here that used to sit on the lot. Before, after. You can see we made a much bigger house. That tree looks really close to the house, but it's actually quite far away from it. It's just the angle. So you can see we had to cut down a bunch of trees. This is actually from the street. I'm actually standing in the street, but much more zoomed in. But we cut a bunch of trees down over here, so this isn't all being blocked and there's not so much hazard to the house from these trees. But this is kind of what you can actually fit on the property versus what was there before. So this is a great piece of property. You can see the house next door is a nice big house as well. So this is actually more appropriate to the size of the house next door. And the house next door is taller because the overlay wasn't there at the time. This one has to be 28 feet, so we're actually shorter than the house next door. So this is gonna be a really cool project. We're really excited to see what buyers think of this property. We're gonna probably list it for sale publicly within the next I don't know, a couple weeks, something like that. See if we can snag a buyer off market, because that way we can go ahead and secure them and we can get the process moving a lot faster. They can get their bank paperwork done, everything ready. So literally like the day after we finish the house completely, they can close and move right in. There's not that delay of staging the home, putting it on market for, you know, a week, 2-3 weeks, whatever it ends up being. Sometimes they sell in a day, and then 30-45 days for the bank to close. You can do all that, truncate it while you're in construction. So you save potentially 1 to 2 months, which time is money. So the more time we can save, the better. And it keeps our profit margins a little bit better. So that's it, guys. That kind of gives you a crash course into an inspiration to reality on just one of our projects. And there's tons more that has to happen just to prepare this one build. So much more. And we have 12 of these suckers going at once, and we're getting more every day. So it's a lot. We have a good team. I do a lot of this stuff by myself. Well, I do pretty much all of it by myself on the design side. I've got Christy helping me out. She does a good bit as well on the design side, but the logistics of putting all these packages together, doing all this planning and permitting and all that fun stuff, it's all me. You know, we've got teams that help us with permitting. Obviously out in the field, we've got a great superintendent. You'll see him in a lot of our videos. His name is Shem. He's running around making sure every project from day to day is staying up to snuff. Balls rolling, wheels are turning, people are on the job site working, planning the next stuff out. But there's a lot of moving pieces to building homes. But once you get into it, you kind of know what you're doing. It's really not that hard. It just takes time. And when you have 12 of them going at once, it can get a little cumbersome. But again, if you know what you're doing, it's not that bad. You know, for people who are getting into flipping or getting into the industry and they want to get into building, I always say cut your teeth on something like this. Over here, I'll show you one of our pop-the-top projects, or we did multiple. Actually, I'll scroll back down to the beginning. I mean, these original ranches right here are some of the first houses we cut our teeth on. These little tiny things. And then we got into the bigger renos and stuff like that. But this house right here, these two houses, the Claremont house and the other Claremont house, these were actual existing ranches that we chopped the roof off and we added a second story to these houses. So I'll show you some before and after pictures right here. These are cool. On the left, that's the original ranch that was there with those two giant oaks. Unfortunately, we had to cut down because they literally would have been into the roof of our new house. And that's the house on the right. This is literally the same house. We took the roof and just chopped it off, scraped out the inside of the house. We added a second story. So this is literally the exact footprint. It had a carport before. We closed it in and made it a garage. This front porch that was there before is basically the same front porch that's there today. We just added this second story. So, you know, I tell people if you want to get into new construction, these are pretty challenging actually. These pop-the-tops, they're way more complicated than new construction. If you can do that, you can do new construction. It's just with this, you kind of have something to work with. You're not having to design from scratch. You have like a house, a shape that you have to work inside of that box. So to me, when you have something to work inside of, it makes it a lot easier versus starting from scratch. And again, this is like shots of the inside of the house before and after. And obviously we completely reconfigured this house. Like it was not the same house anymore, but you get the idea. So I encourage people were telling me for years while I was doing renos and pop-the-tops, like, you still do that? You need to get new construction. And now I see why, because new construction's easier. It's still a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of components to it, but it's way easier. So stay tuned, guys. We're going to give you some more inspo on some of these other projects. We're going to go through in detail some of the other ones that are a little bit more high-end in the Buckhead and the Sandy Springs area. And we'll obviously give you some updates as the projects move along. Click on some of our links and some of our other videos if you want to see progress of some of those. And stay tuned.